Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of the Daily Friend Show. I'm your host, Nicholas Lorimer, and today I'm joined by Mr. Hermann Pretorius. Hermann, how are you doing, sir?
I am well, thank you. And unless you count the fact that before we started this recording, you commented on my lighting, making me look even, whiter than I actually am. But seeing as we're all non-racialists here, just block off my part of the screen if it upsets you. I apologize.
And of course, we are also joined, I think for the first time on the Daily Friend Show, by Mr. Sholan Booysen. Sholan, you are the host of another podcast. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Nick, thanks for having me on the show. I'm really excited. I mean, it's the first time. I've been waiting for the call up and for the invitation, and it finally came. So thanks for having me on the show, Nicholas.
Fantastic. And what's the name of your podcast that you host?
So the podcast that the Freedom Advocacy Network hosts is called Freedom Fanatics. It goes live 6 p.m. on Tuesday. So I'd even encourage you viewers to give it a watch. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Well, it's another wacky week in South Africa, and we're going to start off with our first story today, talking a little bit about crime in the Western Cape. So anyone looking at our crime stats can see the sort of strange thing with murders in the country, which is that Gauteng's pretty bad for almost everything, but the Western Cape has localized in a relatively small number of areas, I think, really bad levels of murder. I think Cape Town maintains its place as in terms of murder rate being the worst in the country. And a lot of that is located in suburbs on the Cape Flats, also in areas around Khayelitsha, those kind of places, and a lot of it is related to gang activity. Well, here's some more stats to support that point of view. There was recently a question asked of Western Cape Community Safety and Police Oversight MEC Reagan Allen about how many mass shootings there had been in the Western Cape between June of 2019 and December of 2021. So what's that, sort of 18 months or so. And it was found that there were about 400 mass shootings in that period. So a mass shooting is defined as an incident by the police where 3 or more people are shot. As a result of these 442 mass shootings, 563 people were killed and more than 1,000 were wounded. And the MEC said that he thinks that it's at least 50% of these are gang-related, and a lot of them are also retaliation for a previous mass shooting, because one gang shoots someone and then the other gang shoots someone else to take revenge. So a very bad situation, and it's one that national government has just not been able to get its handle on, and neither has the provincial government. So Sholan, you stay in that part of the world, or at least you have stayed in that part of the world at a time. What do you make of this situation? What should government be doing? What is government not doing?
Yeah, so the issue of gang violence and mass shootings, as you just spoke of, is an issue that's close to my heart, mainly because I live in a community that is ridden by this very problem where, gangs and gun violence is a daily occurrence. And something that we've seen the local government here at least try to attempt is getting more local law enforcement trained and deployed to get more boots on the ground, as they would say, and essentially to make up for some of the failures of the national government, SAPS, and the South African Police Service, where they have failed. And I think, that is a really good, brilliant idea, stretching out the capacity of government for safety and security. But I also think that that's more focusing on the symptom than it is focusing on the root cause of the issue. Because I think it's important for us to also ask, why are so many young men, especially on the Cape Flats, being sucked up into these gangs and into these syndicates and so forth. And some of the causes for those things are things like unemployment, which is a staggering issue and an unfortunate situation that we struggle with in this country. And also the fact that, there's a massive education failure that our country faces, because many of these members who become gangs, who eventually lead to the symptom of gang violence and mass shootings, many of them are usually high school dropouts who are, young men who are unskilled, uneducated, and they eventually have no other alternative because, there's no jobs for them to provide. And the only people that are offering them some form of way, although it is illegal, to get some income is gangs and gang members, offering that. And I mean, in South Africa, we face the issue of gang violence, whereas in other countries, like I'm thinking about Mozambique and Nigeria, when there's this youthful population that is unemployed, they tend to situations where they use terrorism and terrorist attacks to, voice their disillusionment with the way things are happening in the country. And I think gang violence is an issue that, speaks to social problems that we have, such as unemployment in the country as well. And although, I mean, myself and Hermann, who had this conversation, we was like, there really isn't the silver bullet solution for something like gang violence in the country, but there are things that we can help alleviate the struggles of those people who are rather vulnerable to going that direction in their life. Yeah.
So I definitely agree with that point that there's no silver bullet. Even particularly wealthy countries, once a kind of a gang gets entrenched, I mean, I think of a country like Japan, right, which has like some of the lowest crime rates in the world, and yet it still actually does have some gangs that operate there, because once they sort of manage to get their claws into a community, it's very difficult
Yes.
to pry them out. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't start trying. So Hermann, of course, one of the recurring dimensions of this public debate has been around the role of the province in enforcing crime here. The Western Cape and the city of Cape Town in particular have pointed to national government, saying that policing, it's a national competency. The police should be doing more. We don't have the proper resources and stuff to do it. And national government has said, oh, you're not supporting us, or, oh, we don't have enough resources to spend on you guys. And as a result, there's been this development of, quite a lot of provincial and city police, which I think the ANC government has pushed back on. So what do you make of all this, Hermann? How does government get around this problem?
Yeah, well, I part of the problem, as you say, is quite clearly this this strained relationship between the provincial government and the national government, and it sort of, to my mind, calls up the necessity for more decentralized decision making. If we had a more federal structure, and police was perhaps more federalized, decentralized, ironically, along the lines of what the National Party did in the early 90s when it came to the National Prosecuting Authority, really creating provincial level prosecutorial structures, that would perhaps start giving problem solvers on the ground or closer to the problem perhaps a greater competence, and it also will, in a way, depoliticize the issue as it currently is. It is to the cynical political advantage of the ANC that Cape Town and surrounding areas can't get a hold of its violent crime situation. And if you don't think that plays into some of the political decision making, then I do think that you are being overly kind to the integrity of politicians. So if we have this conflict between national and provincial politics, where the problem is almost entirely owned by the local government, the provincial government, but the solution is the province of the national government, you get into a quagmire of blame that really doesn't get the problem anywhere close to being solved. So I think a first institutional, broader step to address this is more decentralized policing. And you could even decentralize it further from provincial level to municipal level to district level. There are, of course, pitfalls in district level crime entities and crime fighting, as we see in America and in parts of the UK. It's not perfect, but it moves accountability and blame and responsibility into a closer proximity to each other than it currently is. But it is worth remembering that this is an issue that essentially is a social one. That you can trace. I've got, well, not on my shelf here, but on my Kindle, a brilliant book. I can't remember the author. I never can. Gang Town, which where the origin of the gang culture is really drawn to the apartheid relocation policies, where parental structures, or parental oversight, family structures were just decimated by moving people further away from job centers for the sake of, the mad ethno-nationalist agenda of having, people who look the same live together. So this problem is a social one where the social fabric came under assault from the previous government, and the solution to that in the longer term, I can't think is anything but an attempt to repair the social fabric there. And that means the strengthening, and Big Daddy Liberty might be proud of me here, but it's very much faith, fag, and family values that I think would be the response here. You cannot look at the sociological research here and not come to the conclusion that, yes, economic factors, dangerous, risky, education factors, dangerous, risky to gang culture. But if part of the research shows that father figures, family, fraternity, inclusivity on an emotional, familial level drives a large part of the romance of gang culture that initially is that, Novocaine that gets these kids buying into this. These kids at adolescent age do not go, socioeconomically, I think this is a good idea. It is a question of, I feel unwanted. Where can I feel wanted? I feel unsafe. Where can I feel safe? And it is a catastrophe that something like gang culture can offer the romance of safety.
It's a search in part for meaning.
Yes, absolutely.
And that is, if we have time, that is going to come up again in our discussion today. All right, Sholan, any final thoughts before we move on?
No, I have to just agree with what Hermann just said there, that it is a broader issue than just, seeing a couple of numbers and statistics on a piece of paper, but that there are, deep-seated social and relational issues that also need to be addressed in that regard. And I personally think that when it comes to things like unemployment, that, households where there are no fathers, those are things that can be rectified. And I think that the best people to rectify it is not some national government chilling in Pretorius buildings, but it's actually, communities and people who understand how these gangs operate, how the real deep-seated problems that they actually face in their community. Those are the best people to actually solve these problems that we have identified. Yeah.
I just quickly want to add something very, very briefly to this discussion. This isn't to be bleeding-hearted liberals saying, oh, these kids are such victims of society. No. This isn't about whether someone is a victim or not. This is whether someone has been taught the basic value of holding themselves accountable for their actions. So I'm not saying the victim is therefore the perpetrator in these crimes. I'm saying the structures that teach basic morality from a young age, basic accountability for your own actions. These structures have been decimated by decades of policy. And of course, there's no excuse for going into gang culture. You can't say the system made me do it. You can't be a Hansi Cruier in the stand on that score. But the point is that societally, there are mechanisms that teach that sort of moral accountability and moral rigor that have become decimated, the family and schooling structures perhaps being on top of that. So I just want to make clear, we're not making special pleading for these perpetrators of violence as victims. There is a component where that thing cuts both ways.
And while repairing and rebuilding families may take a long time, it would be useful if a lot of South Africa's schools were not simply just warehouses where people went to sit and spend their days rather than getting an education. Yeah. Anyway, let's move on to our next topic. So the Amatoile District Municipality in the Eastern Cape has been in the news a couple of times over the past couple of months, and that is because it is flat broke, out of money, there's nothing more to be spent, it's toast. Well, it seems like it's getting only more difficult for the Amatoile municipality. Recently, during a statement in the council put out during a meeting, they admitted that they're going to have to be writing off 1.2 billion rand in debt that was owed to the council by businesses and the public for municipal services, mostly water and electricity. So the majority of this debt, over half of it, is from domestic customers, so basically just houses. Some of it is from liquidated businesses. Some of it is from indigent households. And there's a little bit here and there from farms and NGOs. but the vast majority is basically from ordinary people. The municipality said that it was unable to recover this debt despite conducting what it called vigorous debt collecting initiatives, which sounds like something the mafia would do. But anyway, the municipality said that in addition to these challenges, there was also the constant threat and misuse of water by residents, theft of water and misuse by residents, that there were lots of illegal connections and abuses of the system, and that there was another factor driving up the number of households which owed money, and that was that there were people who actually would qualify to not have to pay rates because they were very poor, who had failed to apply for indigent subsidies and therefore ended up being billed for services they could not afford. So a total mess, and not isolated to the Amatola municipality. I know, for example, that Johannesburg also has a lot of bad debt that's outstanding, and I think so does Pretoria. Hermann, what do you make of this?
Well, the first thing we should note is this doesn't happen overnight. You don't wake up one morning and you're the accountant responsible for the books of the municipality and say, oh, 1.2 billion. Don't know where that came from. This is systemic failure over many, many years. And it is fascinating to read the Local Government Finance Act or something like that. Municipal Finance Management Act. Section 71 of that makes clear that the person responsible for the accounts has on a monthly basis to report to the council and the executive of the council the state of revenue collection, the state of expenditure, all of these things. So this sort of problem escalating to a figure of 1.2 billion rand is incompetence on so many levels that it is actually quite astounding. You have to be committed to be this bad at your job. So, there's a small round of applause that needs to go there. It's sort of like Eskom making a loss on a monopoly. I mean, just well done, chaps. But part of the problem here, it's similar to, so let's look at what the municipality is blaming here. They are blaming residents that steal water from dilapidated water infrastructure. Might it be the municipality's responsibility to keep that sort of infrastructure and that sort of illegal practice in check? I don't know. That's just a gut feel from my side. Is it perhaps the responsibility of the council and the municipality to, in the first place, make sure that its residents understand its own debt collection details? It's sort of like a police blaming crime on criminals. It's just like, what were you expecting? So you had this problem of systemic failure over many, many years. Clearly, the accounting, the numbers not tallying up, the people responsible not doing their jobs. And then you have this added issue of chickens coming home to roost. For such a long time, it was convenient for the municipality to sort of turn a blind eye to debt or to illegal water connections, as we see in Johannesburg, especially in Soweto, illegal power connections. These things have for so long been just part and parcel of the problem that you really can't now at any point, at this point, point the finger at anyone other than yourselves. I think it's also in this municipality I think it's also in this municipality where we get to the fact that 900 people were appointed in 2013 as part of a mass employment push where it's sort of a surprise. Oh, we accidentally appointed 900 people in a single year. Now, Nick, I don't know about you and I don't know about you, Sholan, but have you ever appointed 900 people and then just sort of gone, oh, the budget wasn't there for 900 appointments. Oh, whoops. So it's just basic competence, basic competence.
So I will stick up a little bit for the municipality here, in which I think that this is a symptom, in part at least, of the kind of general breakdown of social trust in South Africa. On one hand, you've got government that doesn't provide good services, that people feel like they're being ripped off, that steals money. And on the other hand, you've got people who don't pay bills even when they can afford it. You've got people who try to dodge services and taxes and stuff whenever they can because they feel like they're being screwed over by government. And you have people who take advantage of the system and maybe steal here or there. And this is a sort of ongoing problem. And we've seen, for example, like Eskom has had real problems collecting its debt in Soweto that it's owed by the residents of that area. So I don't know. It seems like we've kind of reached a bit of a in some ways a Mexican standoff. That is two people pointing guns at each other between residents and government in large parts of the country, which is that no one really trusts anyone else, and no one is willing to give money or services to anyone else because they're worried they might steal it. So I don't know really how we start untangling this ball of wool. Sholan, your thoughts?
Yeah, Nick, no, that's a really good scenario and context you just placed there, because I think that, at firstly, if the municipality actually expects people to be, consistent ratepayers, the municipality should maybe, I don't know, create an environment that's actually conducive for businesses to make profit and employ people who are then able to actually pay rates and taxes. It's almost the similar thing as though, like government makes things so difficult for the unemployment rate to actually improve in South Africa, and then they're still surprised as to why is there so little people paying tax in this country. I mean, it just does not make any sense. And I mean, this this whole situation is actually in contrast to what we all of us actually advocate for, which is a limited government. Because even in the article it states that the municipality was actually bloated, that there were actually more people employed than was actually necessary. And even one of the situations was where I think it was the political advisor or something to the mayor, receiving more than R1 million pay package when the municipality is waiting for bailouts from the national government and the provincial government. It just, it's a weird situation to be in. But at the same time, I also want to put in some personal responsibility when it comes to the people who actually live in this municipality. Because I mean, when you see that, if you look around and you're actually seeing, but things are not so lekker in my community or in my area, you actually have to start questioning yourself. But you know what? Maybe placing blind loyalty after a political party that operates, because I think it's the ANC that actually dominates this region, for you to actually be like, but these people really are not serving our interest. Maybe next time we head to the polls, I should place my vote behind an alternative political party that, is contesting for elections in this region. Because this has been going on for such a long time. And I mean, that's what you get when people are just placed in positions because of their loyalty and because they are cadres of the ANC. And, it's not actually based on merit, and people who can actually read these books and financial statements that are given to them. Yeah.
I see in the comments here someone saying, I want to pay rates, there's a thought. And I think most South Africans actually echo that sentiment. That was part of, I think, the motivation behind the, 2019, possibly 2020 court case of the Gauteng River Municipality, where ratepayers got the court to accede to their argument, saying that if you are entitled to service delivery from the municipality, but the municipality isn't forthcoming in delivering those services, you can, from your own expenses, pay for those services and then ask for remuneration or reward from the municipality. So it's not an idea of those inhabitants dodging their responsibility to pay rates. It's just a question of, as Sholan says, are you paying rates and are you seeing the results for the services that's supposed to be funded by the rates you pay? So I think, yes, South Africans do not have a problem with paying taxes and paying rates where we feel these things actually get put to good use. I'm surprised we don't see a greater sort of tax and rate delinquency on a broader scale, just due to the lack of trust in government. But there we are. South Africans seem to be decent citizens mostly, and it's really not their failure that's driving the failures.
All right, let's move on to our last topic, and we're going to go overseas for this one, or second last topic. It depends how we do on this one. There's been another mass shooting in the US, but this time it happened in Buffalo, in New York. A guy who is about 18 years old traveled about 300 Ks from where he lives to a black neighborhood in New York State, not city, and shot 13 people, 11 of them black, 2 of them white.
Sure.
He himself carried out this attack. He released online on 8chan, on 4chan, and on some Discord servers he was a part of, 80-page manifesto talking about how he believed that there was a global conspiracy of Jews to replace all white people in the United States with non-whites from immigration. It's been called the Great Replacement Theory. It's an idea that's been sort of floating around the kind of neo-Nazi white nationalist space for a while. It's emerged that last year, this guy had actually, when he was still in high school, had made threatening statements and threatened to shoot up his school. And so there are questions being asked by people as to whether authorities could perhaps have done something about this beforehand. New York is one of the states which has passed what's called a red flag law, which is a law that says that if someone is, like threatens to shoot up their school or something, a court can temporarily seize their firearms until such a time as there's been a sort of further investigation as to whether this person is a threat to the public or not. Those are quite controversial, those red flag laws, but New York is one of the states that has them. And it doesn't seem to have made any sort of a difference. This guy also, I think he described himself as a populist, eco-fascist, national socialist. So basically an eco-fascist neo-Nazi. And he also live streamed his shooting online. So this is not the first time this has happened. There was a guy in New Zealand, in Christchurch, who went up and shot up a mosque for much the same reasons. And he also live streamed on Facebook his murder spree. So we've seen a couple of these in the last couple of years. We've seen a shooting up of a synagogue, which is very similar. There was a guy who went to a black church in, I think it was South Carolina, in around, when was it, 2015 or so, and shot up that place. So clearly a problem, and a lot of this is driven by individual guys, usually quite young, who don't seem to have a lot of direction in life, who get sucked into a sort of radical movement and carry out these attacks. So, Hermann, let me start with you. What do you make of the story?
It reminds of the mass shootings story, the topic that we covered earlier, and I do think the reasons are similar. Interestingly, from a race relations perspective, race relations in America, if one goes on, reliable polling like Gallup, which is broadly seen as credible, race relations in America really improve to a point of remarkable stability and positivity, where between 2/3 and 3/4 of white and black Americans up to about the year 2012-13 are of the opinion that race relations are either improving or are good and remaining well at that level. Then from 2013, you really see the decline of those numbers. Ironically, it is one of those further indications that whatever the left might say of him and whatever the right might, worship him for, Donald Trump is more symptom than cause quite often of these sort of hot button topics. Already 3 years prior to his presidency, we see the start of this drastic decline. That actually stabilized a bit in some demographics during the Trump presidency. So the race relations element in South Africa really starts to go haywire around about the time of the start of Obama's second term. Now, correlation, causation, all that.
In America, you're saying? Not
yes. Apologies. Yes, in America. Now, causation and correlation, one doesn't want to blame Barack Obama for race relations worsening, but one has to start looking at what was happening in governmental policy at the federal and at the state level at that time to start injecting this sort of vitriol into the system. The second point that one should also appreciate is New York is one of the states in the US with the most stringent gun laws. So whenever in the aftermath of this, it's very likely that the Democrats will go full on again on gun control. And it is not the solution to this problem. The fact that he streamed this massacre live is, to me, testament of the real vacuity that has really taken hold in modern man. It goes back to faith, flag, and family values. I do think that social structures are now so weakened by atomistic liberalism, rather than a more sort of classic liberalism where the idea of the family as institution is still respected. compounded by the relative, hollow feeling of connection that the internet provides. So in your immediate circumstances as an individual, you are quite isolated and atomistically liberal functioning. But on the fake level of social media engagement, you feel yourself part of this radical community. All of these mass race shooters and race killers have one thing in common, and that is to start a race war, thinking that they will be the spark that lights this big community of which they are a part to positive and victorious action. It reflects the most decrepit parts of what has really gone wrong in our societies, that in the immediacy you are alone, but in the broader context of the entertainment value of social media, you feel connected to other people. And I think C.S. Lewis in his Screwtape Letters goes very well to this idea that to isolate the individual morally, have them be invested in issues that are not near to them, but have them disinvest from issues that are near to them. And the fact that he had to drive 300 kilometers to get to this point of hatred, I think says it all.
Sholan, we don't have a lot of time left, like 40 seconds or so. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I'll be quick. So all I would want to say is that I think that this situation, especially for us in the South African context, it really teaches us an important lesson, because, when we attempt to create formations of, us versus them, based on things like gender and race and, nationality, especially with xenophobia in South Africa, we are entering dangerous territory, because, it will more than likely end up in violent actions, as we saw now in Buffalo with white nationalists. And I'm like, we should really see what the end result is from, creating in-groups and out-groups in our society. Yeah.
All right, that's all the time we have for today. So we hope that you found the show interesting, and we will, of course, see you tomorrow on the Daily Friend Show. Please, if you thought this video was interesting, like and subscribe to it, or leave us good reviews and all that good stuff. Anyway, we will see you tomorrow on the Daily Friend Show. I hope you have a great one. Cheers, everyone.